There are a lot of people who have strange personalities in the world, and some of them can be found fighting professionally in a UFC ring. The fighters chosen for UFC are diverse, coming from extremely different parts of the world and having different personalities. Want to know which fighters in the sport have the wildest personalities? Well, keep on watching as we take a look at 15 of the strangest personalities in UFC. First, let's talk about Chris Leben. You don't earn a nickname like a crippler for being a person who people aren't afraid to take on in the ring. This, of course, is the case with Chris Leben. Leben has made a name for himself being a crazy fighter. He has tattoos up and down his body, usually paired with his nails of assorted colors and his bright red head of hair. His actions show Leben's insane will to fight to clear his head. Where some people will take a walk or nap, Chris Leben climbs literal mountains in Hawaii where he lives. Next, let's talk about Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock has been titled the world's most dangerous man, and that alone should let you know all you need to know about the now retired fighter. The beef he's found himself in with fighters like Dan Severn and Tito Ortiz have been among some of the most interesting in the history of the sport and some of the most watched matches. Shamrock has bounced from sport to sport, fighting people in any way he can, rather than as a mixed martial arts fighter or as a wrestler. The main thing fans love about Shamrock is his raw, unmatched intensity, which he brings to every fight. Now, let's talk about Chuck Liddell. When most people hear the name Iceman, they immediately think of two things. The first is Val Kilmer's notorious character from Top Gun, with the second being Chuck Liddell. Liddell is one of the fighters that put the sport on the map and has since been praised for it. This fighter can be found sporting his iconic mohawk. Before being a professional fighter, he worked as a bartender, which still brought in its fair share of fighting for Liddell, who once got into a fight with a group of Navy SEALs while working at the bar. Liddell has also appeared in movies such as How High and Drillbit Taylor. We're now going to talk about Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is a name that's as familiar to wrestlers as it is to UFC fans. This makes sense because before he was a UFC fighter, Lesnar wrestled for the WWE. Lesnar is an incredible fighter in the ring, one who made a name for himself in the UFC after just one fight in the ring. His personality in the ring brings people in, as it always has. Fans love that Lesnar is a trash talker, but they also love that he has what it takes to back that trash talking up. With his awesome, interesting sword tattoo, Lesnar is a very unusual fighter. Let's next talk about Tito Ortiz. While Huntington Beach Bad Boy may not be as intimidating as some of the other nicknames on the list, Tito Ortiz will always let his opponent know that they should not lower their expectations when fighting against him. The bad boy aspect of his nickname comes from his love of trash talking. To understand how much trash Ortiz talked, remember that he gave trash talking lessons to Conor McGregor. When Tito Ortiz isn't fighting in the ring, you can find him doing other things. Things like being the mayor of his hometown, which was his situation for a short time in 2020. Moving on, let's talk about Quinton Jackson. Another fighter whose intenseness can be made out of their nickname is Quinton Jackson. If Quinton does not sound familiar to you, then Rampage Jackson will. Jackson was given the name Rampage for his tendency to cause complete scenes of terror with his fights, much like a rampage would. Just look at the video that went viral, which featured him destroying an entire door with just his fists, punching and kicking at the inanimate object until there was nothing but shattered pieces. Jackson also appeared in the A-Team remake as B.A. Baracus. Not just anybody can take on the role once played by Mr. T. It's time to talk about Chael Sonnen. UFC fighters are known for being incredibly risky with the things they do. If not by performing dangerous moves inside the ring, then by performing them outside the ring by talking smack to opponents most would not dream of messing with. Chael Sonnen has never been a person who fears fighters, as he's gone to show he's nowhere near afraid to call anyone out, not even Anderson Silva, who he had an ongoing feud with, a feud that many have said is the best UFC feud to date. Sonnen took it as far as to even promise he'd retire if Silva beat him. Let's now talk about Diego Sanchez. Don't let his nickname fool you. While they may call Diego Sanchez the Dream, he could quickly turn into a UFC fighter's nightmare. This has been seen countless times with the scary intensity he brings to all his fights. It's not during his fights that can strike you as frightening either. His pre-game rituals involve some freaky stare-downs to his opponents. He's had some interesting moments before fights. For example, when he walked into the ring holding a giant Van Helsing-like cross. And why did he do that? Because why not? Because why not? We're going to now talk about Rich Franklin. It isn't so much that Rich Franklin is a strange character. Even his nickname is pretty normal. Fans call him Ace. Now, while he may not be as strange or unconventional as all the other fighters on this list, his road to becoming a UFC fighter is among the strangest. Before he became a UFC fighter, Rich Franklin taught math at a high school somewhere in high school. Franklin decided that grading papers were not the lifestyle he was after, so he took on UFC fighting and became a widely known name in the sport. It must be a fun story for his former students. We'll go on to talk about Nick Diaz. The Diaz name is a widely known name in UFC. Both brothers, Nick and Nate Diaz, are prominent sports figures. They're also some of the most strange fighters. This is proof of how Nick Diaz gets ready for a fight. While some might exercise in a gym or field, Nick Diaz takes it a step further by performing full triathlons in preparation. He's also done some strange things outside of the ring, like when he got into a fight with Joe Riggs after one of their fights. A fight occurred in a hospital room where they were getting checked up. Let's talk about the other Diaz brother, Nate Diaz. You cannot talk about one without discussing the other. While Nick Diaz may be the wilder out of the two, Nick is wilder in the ring. Nate, who is said by some to be the best game-time fighter in his division, has had some wild moments in the ring. Moments like agreeing to fight Conor McGregor, but negotiating in a slap to the Irish fighter. McGregor is not the only person Nate Diaz has slapped. Not too long after, he slapped UFC President Dana White. He, of course, got permission from White himself to slap him on camera. Now, we're going to talk about Clay Guida. Clay Guida's intensity can be discovered solely from his preferred residence, an RV. Some could say that Guida has a few screws missing, but that does not mean he's a person people cannot find themselves liking. With his signature long hair and tattooed arms, Guida is still a likable fighter. Nicknamed the Carpenter, Guida has earned his spot in UFC history. Guida has never missed a chance to express himself in the ring, no matter how strange it may be. The strangest thing about him is probably still his living condition, considering all the money he's made. But if it makes him happy, good for him. Before we finish up the list, let's talk about Forrest Griffin. Even though Forrest Griffin is very well trained in mixed martial arts, he does not always use his training in fights. His style of fighting is wild, unpredictable, and flat out strange. While it's a difficult task to take on a man who's fighting in a crazy and unpredictable style, it's a blast for fans to watch the fights and see what Griffin will do and how things will turn out. Even if he loses the fight, fans will not be disappointed, as Griffin is not a person who handles losses poorly. Griffin is not just a fighter, but also a best-selling author. Finally, let's talk about Jason Miller. Jason Miller is another one of those fighters whose intensity can be seen from his nickname alone. His nickname being Mayhem, which serves as a warning for any fighter who wants to take him on. Some of the things that Miller does are strange as can get. Take, for example, the times he entered the ring wearing various masks. Masks like a hockey mask or a paper bag mask, with the latter stirring up some controversy and getting him in trouble. Miller is known for his dyed hair. What color, you ask? Pick a week, as he's known to dye them different colors weekly. UFC is home to a lot of strange fighters. Some may be just stage personas, while others may behave like this. Which of these fighters listed is your favorite? Be sure to let us know who you pick and why in the comment section below.